two people are in a large hall with columns. One of them is standing on a dais. A crystal is shining between them. An older man in a cassock tells the startled blue-eyed boy that he, the Oracle, foresaw his skill and this awakening. He calls him by name as Kaito Felbosh. It's a sunny day. The city is alive and people are going about their business. Carriages are driving here and there. A carriage with two horses is driving along the pavement. A well-dressed guy sitting in the carriage sighs heavily, raising his hands up. Kaito clenches his hand into a fist. Someone from the other side of the carriage looks at him as he fidgets and laughs. The guy, his legs crossed, addresses him as a brother and tells him to relax, and they arrive triumphantly in their Felbach territory. A slightly embarrassed smile appears on Kaito's face as he says his brother's name, Cleo. The boy, in turn, puts his hand forward and focuses energy in it, saying that his brother finally got the skill. He shouts that the skill is a power given to him by the gods, and a simple sign appears on his hand in the form of a soft diamond with two waves inside. Cleo shakes the mark off her hand and says enthusiastically that they will use them to develop their territory, no matter what skill his brother has. Kaito also activates his skill and, looking at his hand, says that he went to the Oracle so that his abilities would be useful somewhere. They end up in front of their father, and when he finds out that Kaito has received the awakening skill, he calls him trash. A glowing, soft diamond with the same diamond-shaped shapes inside appears on the boy's palm. The boy is stunned by his father's reaction. He does not understand what is happening. The parent looks at him with disdain. Kaito tries to say something in his defense, and Cleo sarcastically and darkly says that he thought it would be like this. The father looks menacingly at the children and says that the land of Felbach was entrusted to their family personally by the emperor, and thanks to this, they have inherited this territory from generation to generation. He angrily slams his fist on the table. He says that his father, Alphonse Felbach, with the skill Wind of Abundance, can change the climate to be more fertile. His younger brother, with the skill Fountain of Wealth, makes the dried-up land fertile, and these skills are the best for the lord of the land. In a fit of anger, the father shouts that he, the eldest son and face of the family, in turn received an insignificant skill. Kaito looks at his father in horror, realizing the tragedy of the situation. The parent continues to press the issue, saying that all Kaito can do is wake up the sleeping, and that it is a complete failure for him because he will not be able to get rich with such useless power. The boy looks at his furious father in disappointment. The father continues speaking, noting that he cannot entrust the land to such an insignificant son and makes his younger brother Cleo his heir. He grins slyly, watching this picture. His father tells him that from that moment on, Kaito is banished from the family, and here the boy stands with a suitcase of his things, having lost everything in an instant. The carriage takes him away from home and leaves him alone on the road, in a robe with a few things and a sword in his bosom. The guy still finds it hard to comprehend what is happening. Standing on dry ground, the hero laments the fact that he was kicked out of his home because of the skill he acquired. He squints against the strong wind. The boy stands on the edge of the cliff, realizing that the place where he was exiled is the territory where criminals are exiled. He looks at the deserted area called Algord. There is no greenery on the ground, only sharp stone cliffs are visible in the distance, and a strong dry wind ruffles his clothes and hair. Looking into the distance, the hero regretfully complains that he was sent to such a place, and not somewhere more lively and better. The guy exhales tiredly. Kaito holds a letter in his hand, which says that he is being appointed as the new lord of Algord to restore it. He looks around the area again and realizes that this desert is now his new domain. He smiles encouragingly. Gathering his resolve, he says that he has no choice but to actually give this territory a new life, since he is now its owner. He reaches for the clasp to unfasten his coat. With a fluid motion, he removes his cloak and turns around. Looking at the withered trees and animal remains in the desert, he doubtfully thinks about what he said earlier. He doesn't understand why there is not a single person there, only empty buildings standing on the cliff. He recalls the stories he heard on the way to this place, that it is teeming with all sorts of monsters, and that even the undead can walk there at night. The guy assumes that the residents have run out of strength to endure all this, and they went deeper into the territories. At this moment, an idea comes to his mind. He approaches one of the empty houses, noticing with concern that the sun is setting. Kaito decides that it would be better to spend the night in the hut than to face the monsters in the open air. Something catches his attention. He sees a large stone gate in the building where he wanted to spend the night. with the same soft diamond with sharp ends as on the marks. He comes closer and goes inside. There he sees a stone statue of a girl with wings. The guy assumes that the inhabitants worshipped local gods, but notes that the statue itself is half destroyed. Kaito thinks that it has been forgotten and abandoned. He bows respectfully to the statue and, calling it great, asks to borrow a corner of the temple for just one night. The guy opens the suitcase and takes out a rag. He carefully wipes the statue, its wings and face. When he is done, he looks at it with satisfaction and a smile. Kaito settles himself against the wall, placing his sword next to him and covering himself with a blanket. He glances at the statue illuminated by the full moon once more and bids it goodnight. In the morning, he wakes up with his face on the corner of a suitcase. He opens his eyes, a little disoriented. He trembles slightly, white dust swirls around him. The guy thinks that waking up was terrible and coughs, exhaling sand that got into his mouth. He looks at his hand, his vision swimming. He thinks about how he hasn't been able to sleep for a long time because of the stone bed, or maybe because of the knowledge that he has been banished. He turns his head to shake the fog out of his head and the dust out of his eyes that is making it hard for him to see. The guy thinks that he needs to wait until his head clears up and also introduce himself well to the locals. He also notes that he needs to get a good bed. He reflects that the reason for his exile is the skill, and since all is lost, he might as well use it anyway. His hands fill with energy. Kaito claps his hands and activates the skill, causing energy waves to spread out from its impact. The skill envelops him, and the boy opens his eyes doubtfully. What he realizes causes him to be surprised. He is amazed by the effect, and even jumps up with joy, not believing what happened. The guy analyzes his condition with admiration, saying that his head has finally cleared up and he feels great. He understands that thanks to this, he can wake up in any environment and become cheerful. He stretches contentedly and goes out. He also sees a bleak desert and regrets that reality has not gone away, even if his head is fresh. His attention is attracted by a sound. A roar shakes the earth. The hero's eyes widen in shock. The earth trembles beneath the hero and he loses his balance. He thinks with horror that it is an earthquake. The temple behind him begins to collapse. Kaito doesn't understand what's happening and why the ground is vibrating. The force of the rumble causes stones from the temple ceiling to fall onto the statue. The statue splits in two, and in its place a beautiful long-haired girl in white robes flies up on wings. A sign shines above her head. She opens her eyes and looks at Kaito. He, a little battered from the earthquake, looks back in shock, assuming that this girl was inside the statue. She goes down to him and demands to know if he is the one who woke her up. The guy is embarrassed and steps back in surprise. He pulls himself together and introduces himself, asking her name in return. She sheepishly introduces herself as Sierra. Sierra enjoys the sun rays while sitting on the ruins of the temple. Kaito thinks about how he was the only one in the temple and wonders where she came from. He thought for a moment that she had wings, and he doubts that she is human. He looks at her carefully, and she looks at him. He notices her back, where there is no hint that there could be wings. The guy decides that it is stupid to judge a person based on guesses. He turns to her. Kaito asks if he can call her by her first name, and she says that she will call him by that name. He wants to ask her something. The girl listens to him attentively. Kaito tells her that he was exiled yesterday and that he will be appointed as the Lord of Algord. He adds that in the morning there was a jolt, similar to an earthquake, and he met her. The guy asks Sierra directly who she is. Large, white, shining wings open behind the girl. The halo appears above her head again, and she replies that she is an archangel. Kaito looks at her in shock and can't believe what he just heard. Sierra explains that she came down to Earth about 100 years ago. The boy remembers reading about it in a history book, that there were different races and saints and demons, but he thought it was all fairy tales. He looks at her wings and halo and is convinced that she is a real angel. It seems to him as if he is touching some myth with his own hands. She says that she was sealed here. Kaito is surprised by her words. The girl says that for many years she wanted to wake up but could not even move. The boy is shocked by the information he received. He asks Sierra why she was sealed. She replies doubtfully that she cannot remember it. He continues to ask her about who did this to her, and where she came from, and why she came down to Earth. To all this, the girl answers that she does not remember anything. Kaito thinks that this angel is very forgetful. She closes her eyes, remembering what she heard, a sound that was both pleasant and unexpected. She felt like the fog in her head and throughout her body was clearing, and after all the noise, she realized that she was finally awake. The boy guesses what kind of sound she could hear and activates his skill. Signs appear on his palms and he claps his hands. Sierra looks at him in surprise as Kaito activates his skill. She confirms that it was this sound that woke her up. It was pleasant and cleared her head. She says that Kaito is the one who woke her up. The boy is surprised to realize that this is true. He looks at his hand and is amazed that he was able to awaken an archangel with his abilities and that the effect is contrary to common sense. He clenches his fist confidently, fully aware that he woke Sierra up on his own. He turns to the girl. Sitting in front of her, Kaito smiles and invites her to live with him. His proposal takes her by surprise. He explains that he was nervous about being thrown out of his home and was alone until he met her. The guy thinks that since he broke the seal, he should be held accountable for it. He asks to be addressed by his first name and muses that since she has no memories of her life before the press, she must be very lonely too. He shares his thoughts with her that it is better for both of them to stay together and reflects on the fact that he wants to be with her until she remembers at least something. The guy asks her if she is okay with this idea and says that he will understand if she has somewhere to go. She rushes forward, knocking the guy down a little, and actively agrees to his proposal, saying that she will go with him. He looks at her, stunned, not expecting such a reaction, and she looks down, a little embarrassed. Kaito softens and confirms that this is a wonderful arrangement. They sit next to each other on the floor of a ruined temple, and he says with a smile that they will live here. The girl happily agrees. A skeleton in a robe emerges from behind a broken wall. The guy pays attention to it, freezing. The skeleton opens its mouth. The boy jumps away from it in horror, holding his hand out in front of Sierra. He screams in fear, calling the skeleton undead and a monster. Kaito grabs the sword and swings it confidently, preparing to strike and saying that the rumors were not lying. Skeletons start appearing out of nowhere, their numbers increasing. He tells Sierra to stand behind him to protect her. She asks if he can defeat them all. Pointing his sword at the evil spirit, he replies that everything will be fine and he will definitely protect her. Sierra, seeing this, raises her finger and a glow appears from it. She casts the lightning beam spell, and a powerful stream of lightning strikes the skeletons. Kaito is completely shocked by what is happening. The shockwave from such a powerful attack knocks the guy off his feet, and he flies a considerable distance. Sierra quickly rushes after him, spreading her wings and catching Kaito in midair. She asks how he is, and he replies shaky that he is fine. She carries him through the sky, and he says that they protected him in the end. They fly past the spot where her attack hit. There is now a wide and deep crater there, and Kaito is amazed at its size, saying that he will have to rely on her power more often. They stand on the ground, and the guy suggests looking for people. He also adds that they won't be able to live there peacefully because of constant encounters with monsters. He advises to follow the example of people who used to live there and find another place. At that moment, people approach them and thank them for killing the monster they were chasing. Surprised, they turn around to look. A rough-looking man with shoulder-length hair asks them what they are doing on their land. Kaito also keeps Sierra behind him in a protective position. The stranger asks if they need anything in these parts. Sierra looks at one of the villagers, and he seems to her to be very similar to the skeletons they fought before due to his thinness and the type of skull. She points at him and says that he is undead, preparing to strike. Kaito stops her, shouting that they are just the inhabitants of this territory. The man with long hair looks at the heroes with obvious suspicion, crossing his arms over his chest. The guy thinks that he has finally met the inhabitants of these territories, but at first glance they do not seem very friendly, so he is worried that they will not accept him. But then the man smiles brightly and pleasantly, asking Kaito if they will answer their question. The guy at this moment was already prepared for any reaction except this one. The man looks at the hero's robe, which has the Fellbach family crest embroidered on it. He says that he knows who Kaito is and that they have heard of him. The boy confirms this information. The man is convinced that he was not mistaken. He warns the heroes to be careful because there are many undead in these lands and they attack everyone. The guy agrees. Kaito wants to say something, but then the man's name is called. His friend addresses him, calling him Helmet. The man asks worriedly about the undead, but his friend can't say for sure. He reports that they have come across a nest of the undead, but it is completely blown up and destroyed. Helmet cannot believe it. Kaito realizes that Sierra did it and bows to the villagers, apologizing. Helmut doesn't understand what he's apologizing for. His friend guesses. Kaito is asked if they are the cause of this funnel. The guy confidently answers in the affirmative. The villagers are shocked by this information. Kaito thinks that even though they were defending themselves, they attacked the territory anyway. He wonders if they will believe him that Sierra did this and that she attacked to protect him. The guy says out loud that he did it and that he is ready to take responsibility. The angel looks at him in surprise and confusion. Helmut hopes that they will tell him the details, but first he suggests that they go to a safe place, to their village. They walk among the rocks and reach a place. Helmut points down and a small village is visible there. Already sitting in the house, Helmut introduces himself as a local organizer in Algord. Kaito sits opposite. Sierra lies behind him on the couch. Helmut tells them that he wants to thank them. The guy is perplexed. The man explains that they were the ones who got rid of the nest of the undead. Helmut tells them not to worry, because thanks to them the lands will become calmer, so he has no intention of criticizing them. Kaito understands. The man adds that if he had, he would not have brought them into the house. Helmut says it's time to get down to business, and asks about the fact that they are clearly here for a reason. Kaito confirms this and gives him the letter that was sent with him. The boy explains that he has been appointed Lord of Algord, and that his goal is to settle here and rule these territories. Helmut recognizes a letter from the Fellbach family. Kaito understands that it will be hard for them to have such a junior person as their leader, but he truly wants to take care of the territories given to him and make this land a better place. He assumes they are wondering what the point is in bringing trouble on themselves in the form of a young manager, but he promises that he will do everything to be recognized as a good leader. Helmut replies that he has nothing to admit. Kaito wonders what he means. But then the man smiles brightly and says that he already sees him as a great master. Kaito is surprised and thanks him for such acceptance. The guy assumes it's because he has a great family name and asks them not to be so mistaken. He explains that even though his name is Fellbach, he barely has any connections with aristocrats now. Helmut screams that it doesn't matter. He clenches his fist and says confidently that they destroyed the nest of undead that had terrorized them for years. He says that they were cowards and could not fight back and simply abandoned the land in search of shelter, as did their lord. Kaito says that he is very sorry that the previous owner of the territory did this to them and that he is very ashamed of his predecessor as lord. Helmut says that it is nothing to worry about. He extends his hand to Kaito for a handshake and asks him to just be kind to common people like them, and also to be an aristocrat who feels responsibility and duty to his subordinates. Helmut says he would prefer a lord like Kaito. The guy is very surprised to hear this. He clasps his hands in his lap and bows his head. Tears of gratitude gather in his eyes and he quickly wipes them away with his hand. Kaito notes that he is no longer an aristocrat, and Helmut laughs, saying that it is true. They shake hands firmly. The man jokingly says that the exiled lord in the abandoned territory is not so different from them. There are surprised exclamations. The other villagers find out that the boy is the new lord and ask if Kaito has any skills. Kaito awkwardly says that he has the skill Awakening. The short-haired man says he hasn't heard of such a skill, so it's weak. The other, very thin man, wonders how, in that case, they managed to blow up the undead nest. Kaito thinks they won't believe that an angel did it. He imagines a girl behind him and says her name. Helmut thinks as if it were familiar to him. Sierra complains that they are talking for a long time and that she is tired of waiting for him. The guy apologizes to her. Helmut remembers where he heard this name. He shouts that it is indeed Sierra, the Archangel he read about in the history books of their empire. He says that there is a legend that in her life she exterminated many demons. The girl looks at him, and the man is sure that it is really her, remembering her face from textbooks. She sighs and closes her eyes, lying down on her hands. The man remembers that the textbooks said she was sealed on a battlefield, but he didn't expect it to be their land. The thin man asks if Helmut really believes she's an archangel. He leans over her and says that such a cute face can't be on an archangel. Sierra rubs her eyes and again imagines the man as the skeleton they fought. She speaks undead and prepares an attack, pointing her finger at the man. A powerful bolt of lightning hits the building. A huge hole appears in the house. The man manages to dodge the fatal blow. He asks if the awakening skill really freed Sierra from the years of sealing. Kaito held the girl in his arms, redirecting her blow. He confirms what the man said. She says that Kaito woke her up and that he is now her master. The guy is amazed by her words. because she has never said anything like that before. The thin man says that it is amazing that they have a new lord who is full of motivation to improve the almost dead lands and has gained an Archangel as an ally. The man's eyes shine with joy, and he says that he too recognizes Kaito as their future lord. He is sure that the boy will cope with his duties wonderfully, and he and Helmut shake hands. The others also start chanting his and Sierra's names. The guy looks around happily. Sierra is resting on his arm with her eyes closed. Kaito thinks that this is how they recognized him and the girl. Kaito uses the skill on Helmut. His eyes light up, his skin glows. The man says his skill is wonderful, and that it's the first time he's woken up in such a wonderful state. The boy says he's felt it too. Sierra turns her attention to them. Kaito thanks Helmut for his help. He told him about the problem of all of Algord the day before. The biggest problems are finding food and water. He learned that there are almost 100 people living in the Algorda area. The environment and climate are very different from the northern and southern borders of Algord. On the southern side, Helmut lives with his entire family. There is suitable land there, but the soil is all dry. The northern side is not like that. There is a forest area there rich in resources. Every afternoon, a group of people with impressive physical strength would raid the area for resources. This time, he was with them. Kaito thought it would be a good idea to move the entire population there, making that area the main habitat. But there's a problem: monsters lurking in the shadows that attack from behind. They are extremely strong in this area. For example, a huge horned boar that attacks the hero. Helmut's axe flies straight into his forehead as the hero prepares to attack. The hero says that even the entire population of Algord will not be able to cope with the monsters. These lands are also a paradise for them, so people would have to constantly be attacked. Therefore, they live in the desert, where they only need to fight off the undead. They return to the village. A thin man meets them, asking about their catch. Sierra carries a large boar on her wings, which Helmut clings to. The man gasps in delight at how big the jackpot is this time. Helmut happily says that Sierra herself was able to attract and bring this big guy into their territory. He praises the prey and says that it is incomparable thanks to Sierra. Sierra is very pleased to hear the praise addressed to her, and a small smile appears on her face. They roast the boar. Kaito falls to the ground, saying that they have sorted out the food. Helmut praises his plan, saying that now they will cook fresh meat. He notes that if the boar had not come to the territory itself, the meat would have rotted. The guy is glad that the man understood him. Sierra flies up to them on her wings, holding 2 large pieces of meat on the bone. She says she cooked one of the pieces for him herself. Kaito thanks her and says that she can be relied upon. The girl becomes embarrassed and blushes. She also says that she brought something else and throws a girl in a black skirt at their feet. They look in shock at the tattered, unconscious girl wearing a hat that looks like cat ears. They look at the person in bewilderment, realizing that it is a girl. She sighs heavily. It is clear that she is not in very good condition. Kaito screams that she is still breathing. He tells Helmut worriedly that he needs to take care of her. The man tries to say something. He points to his friends who usually treat themselves with their own remedies, noting that they have no one who understands medicine. The guy turns to Sierra, assuming that if she's an archangel, she can heal wounds. She watches the scene indifferently, eating her piece of meat for dinner. She looks at her hand and says that it is true that she uses magic, but it is mainly offensive. The girl admits that she does not have healing skills. After creating a small bolt of lightning in the meat, she says that she can burn the girl if necessary. Kaito is against this idea and shouts that he realized that there is no cure for her. The boy wonders who can save her, looking worriedly at the large wound on her thigh. The girl was moved to one of the houses that Helmut had allocated. Kaito thanks him, to which he replies that there is no need, since they had originally allocated it for the Lord. The man notes that if he needs anything else, he can ask. Kaito asks him to bring a lot of clean and soft rags, as well as water to wash the wounds. Helmut agrees. Sierra sits in the room and watches the situation. The girl asks if Kaito can heal her, and if he has healing magic. He replies that he does not. The boy thinks that, despite this, he has acquired some medical knowledge while he was in Fellbach, so he knows first aid. He opens the suitcase and takes out several jars. The guy makes healing powders and treats her wounds. He's going to stitch up her biggest wound. The guy thinks he has to try. He starts working on it painstakingly. There are reddish rags lying around. Morning comes. Kaito looks very tired. His eyes are clouded from a sleepless night. Sitting, he bends over, bowing his head. and then places his hands on his knees. They tremble violently. He uses his skill on himself again to wake up. He activates it and immediately feels much better. Kaito notes that his mastery of the skill he uses is getting better each time, and it no longer has a negative effect on Sierra. He stretches his shoulders and looks at the vessels with water near the injured girl's bed. The guy notes that she also shows no signs of awakening. He put a cloth on her forehead to bring down her temperature. Looking at her, he thinks about how he fussed over her all night, but it was all in vain. He decides to try his skill on her. A sign appears on his hand. He thinks that if he could awaken even an angel from a long sleep, it might work on this girl too. He puts his hand in front of her face. After analyzing his ability again, Kaito realized that awakening is not a recovery skill, because although awakening is the best, it does not relieve fatigue and pain. He removes the cloth from her forehead. So he decided that if the girl was restoring her strength in her sleep, then he shouldn't wake her up. The bandage on her leg was soaked in red. The boy squeezes out a cloth into a bucket of water. He assumes it's time to change the bandages. His stomach rumbles. The boy realizes it's time for breakfast, because the last thing he needs is to faint from hunger. The girl slowly regains consciousness, saying that she is hungry. She looks at the hero with a weak gaze. The guy says that he understands. He looks at the girl who has woken up, amazed. Almost in tears, he wishes her good morning and asks if he woke her up. Sierra opens her eyes too. The girl tries to get up from the bed with a groan. Kaito tells her not to get up. She asks where he is. The guy says that he is also interested in hearing her story, but first they need to have breakfast. The village slowly wakes up. People come out into the street. After breakfast, she says that she understands what kind of land she ended up on. She thanks them for their help and introduces herself as Lisa Einhorn. She admits that she is an adventurer. The guy notes that she has the look of an adventurer. She says that she went into the forest with her friends to get materials, but they were attacked by a huge beast. She says she tried to protect her friends but failed. She asks if they have seen her friends. The guy says that Sierra found her and that she is the only one she has seen. The girl hopes that nothing happened to them. Lisa has dark thoughts about being left alone, bruised and maimed, all alone and without friends. Sierra says that she was used as bait and abandoned. Kaito is shocked by this statement. The guy whispers to the girl that she shouldn't say such cruel things openly, no matter how true they are. Lisa laughs awkwardly because of this situation. The guy sympathetically says that it looks like Sierra is right. Lisa, with a wistful smile, realizes that she has been dumped again. The guy clings to the word again, but the girl claps her hands and says that nothing can be done and not much could be expected from the second quest with these friends. She admits that they did not even have time to build trusting relationships. Kaito draws an analogy with his own situation in life and feels uneasy. He squeezes his hands on his hip with tension, knowing full well that despite her laughter, her body shows that she is not happy to be unwanted once again. He asks if this is not the first time. Why does she continue? She admits with a smile that she does this to support herself because she is an orphan. The guy's eyes widen from what he hears. She says that when she was still a child, the church took her in, but when she turned 14, she left and has been taking care of herself for a long time now. She says that she has absolutely nowhere to return to, and if an adventurer completes a quest, he will definitely receive a well-deserved reward that he can feed himself with. Since she is an orphan, she has no choice but to be an adventurer. In his head, he starts comparing their situations. He thinks that she had it hard from the start. He says that Algord is going through hard times now, but it is the 12th largest province in the empire. The guy looks at his hand and says that, as a lord, he wants to do his best to make this place a lot better. He notes that no matter how many people there are or what their position is, he wants everyone to be well. Kaito extends his hand to her and asks if she would like to live here with them. Sierra is taken aback by his offer. She recalls in shock how he proposed the same thing to her when they first met. Lisa asks again if this is true. The guy confirms and says that she can live a quiet life here because they will provide her with food and housing. Kaito looks at her with confidence. From such a proposal, tears begin to roll from her eyes, and she begins to cry uncontrollably and sob with happiness. Kaito apologizes frantically and tries to tell her that he didn't mean to make her cry. Wiping her eyes, she says that she's not crying because she's sad. She, still trying to stop crying, explains that these are tears of joy and says that she agrees to live here. The girl puts her hand in his and notes that she is glad to meet him. She takes the cross from her chest and kisses it, thanking the great angel who brought her to this place. Sierra stands in front of them and says that she is the one who brought her here. Lisa turns her attention to her. Kaito says that he forgot to introduce Sierra as an angel. She turns on the image of an angel, wings appearing behind her and a halo above her head. Sierra confirms that she is an archangel, awakened from a long sleep in a sealed state. Lisa looks at her with a sparkling gaze and cannot quite believe that this is really true. Sierra says, a little threateningly, that she doesn't mind them meeting Kaito, but she definitely won't be living in the house with them. The guys are tensely thinking that they are competing with each other. Lisa sheepishly apologizes for not asking Sierra's permission. She closes her eyes and addresses her as Mistress Archangel Sierra. The girl's form is still a little tense. Lisa tells Sierra that if she doesn't mind, she would like to live in Algord. She continues to call her Madam Archangel. Sierra, hearing this address, changes her anger to mercy and remains satisfied. She tells Kaito that she doesn't mind Lisa, and Kaito jokingly notes how he can gain her favor. Sierra pats Lisa on the head in a mentoring manner. The guy says he will tell Helmet everything so that everyone will be aware of Lisa. He thinks that Sierra is a strong girl and those she likes are guaranteed to be protected. Kaito leaves the house, and right around the corner Helmet is waiting for him, saying that he heard everything. He asks if the guy wants them to quickly create a favorable atmosphere so that the girl gets used to them. Kaito confirms that this is what he wanted, and also for others to join in. The man happily says that he expected nothing less from the Lord. He assures that they will definitely sort this out. He triumphantly informs everyone that they have a new resident in their village. Helmet notes that thanks to Kaito, the village has already welcomed its second new resident. Lisa looks out the window and greets everyone who greets her. Everyone greets her in a friendly manner and gives her various compliments. The hero notes that, for the first time, this is not a sign of exile or exile. Helmet, climbing onto the boar, says that everything is decided, and today they are having a party. Everyone rejoices and supports this idea. A cloudless night with a bright full moon. On this day, a new resident appeared in Algord. The hero finds himself sleeping with two girls on either side. He is not used to such situations. He quickly runs away from home. The guy uses awakening on himself several times. The residents notice him and say hello. They ask him why he got up so early, whether he lives with the girls now, 3 of them, and how he liked the party they had. With empty eyes, he turns to the men and answers positively. So positively that the hero did not even sleep. Morning in the village. Helmet, Kaito, and the thin man are doing their business. The man turns to Lisa, happy that she can walk. She thanks them. They say that everyone in the village was very worried about her. They talk about how, even though she came recently, she always smiles at them and treats people like them with kindness, as if she had come down from paradise. The thin man says he is jealous of Kaito, who asks him to think about his words from an ethical point of view. He thinks that he himself proposed to live together, but he was so deeply moved by her story that he could not do otherwise. Helmet says they even have a real angel now. The thin man says Sierra is scary, and Kaito thinks she's earned quite a reputation. Helmet says that Sierra does an excellent job, slaying monsters and hunting better than anyone. The man tells him that he is a Sierra fanatic. Kaito says that while we are on the subject, he wants to share a story she told him. Sierra and Lisa approach the men. Lisa apologizes for the wait. Helmet notes that her clothes have become lighter, as she is now wearing shorts instead of a skirt. She says that since her pants got torn, she thought about completely altering her clothes. The thin man complains that they are altered too much, as if they were torn. Kaito asks if he is talking about monsters. Lisa shares that Sierra herself said what suits her. The man smiles, while the others are skeptical about his behavior. They return to the problem of water shortage. They are in the backyard of a house. Kaito explains that they need water every day for their daily life, but to get there, they need to get to the other side of the mountain, which may take half a day. Lisa and the boy thank Helmet for doing this for them. The man doesn't understand what he did. He says that he doesn't see anything wrong with it because it's his duty as a villager. After these words, they are grateful to him to tears. Kaito does note, however, that most of this water is used for drinking. Lisa agrees with him and says that if you get more water, you can even cook and take a bath. Helmet says that they have been living in such conditions for a long time and are used to being dirty. Kaito notes that even the newcomers to the village are dirty, except for Sierra. Lisa, shyly pulling her hat onto her head, asks the angel how she can remain so beautiful and pure in such conditions. The girl explains that her skin is covered with a magical membrane. She notes that she won't get dirty unless she wants to, and the same goes for the rain, she won't get wet. Lisa looks at the angel with admiration. Helmet skeptically says that he said this before, but it is too hard to get more water, although he feels sorry for Lisa and her bathtub. Kaito says that he is trying to find a way to get more water without having to dig for it. The guy is told that he has also become very dirty. They ask him what method he has come up with, perhaps digging a well. The guy says he had time to walk around the village and watch the unsuccessful attempt to dig a well. He says that through trial and error, they came to the conclusion that the way they do it now is the best way. He looks at his hand and says that what he heard from Sierra about solving the problem amazed him. The guy reminds everyone that the Algord region has only one territory, on him, and that at the eastern end of the region is Blausen, the city of water. The heroes are surprised by the information about such a city. Kaito adds that they can adopt their experience and skills to improve the technology of creating an internal water supply infrastructure, and that this city also has a statue like Sierra. There is one like the Sierra Angel. Before them appears a half-destroyed, deserted city with a hill in the middle. They doubtfully assume that Blausen, the city of water, has also long since been destroyed. Lisa notes that they have been in the city for 3 days. He finds it hard to believe that so much time has passed since their last day, but he wonders what technology was used and what happened to the angel. The boy and girl agree to keep looking until they find something worthwhile. He and Lisa discuss how the 3 days have flown by in an instant and how the journey has been very difficult. Sierra listens to their conversations with skepticism. At the top of the hill, a half-ruined temple can be seen. They move up the mountain towards it. Lisa asks why they build everything important so high. Kaito explains that this is a city of water and it will be easier for it to flow from top to bottom. He says that's where the water sources and technology they need are likely to be. They reach the top and see a statue of an angel covered in flowers. Kaito says that this statue is almost identical to Sierra's. Lisa notes that it is very large and incredibly beautiful. She calls it the Angel of Creation, Ununice. Sierra says she has a strange seal that prevents the statue from deteriorating. She notes that Ununice is protecting herself. The girl asks Kaito to use Awakening. Sierra says that the Angel of Creation was originally one of her 2 wings, and although she lost her memory, she remembers Ununice. The girl says that it would be better if she goes with her, rather than being sealed. Sierra describes Ununice as capricious and selfish. She says that she certainly won't lend her power if she thinks she woke up from the seal itself. Kaito thinks that the more he learns, the less he wants to unseal her. He reflects that they haven't come across any technology in the city itself, and they don't want to go home empty-handed. He says decisively that they should try. Kaito uses Awakening on the statue, raising his hands up. They watch for a while after that, then something unexpected happens. Instead of a statue, there is now an angel soaring upwards. A graceful girl in a white dress says that she slept soundly and asks if it was Kaito who woke her up. She has long hair, a short dress with feathers. The girl stretches sweetly. She is still in flight, looking down at those who disturbed her sleep with a slight squint. Lisa and Kaito are so shocked that they can't say anything. Sierra looks at her almost indifferently, and Ununice greets her and says that they haven't seen each other for a long time. The girl responds with a greeting. Ununice cheerfully notes that Sierra is just as straightforward. He notes that this is rather strange, since the girl is supposed to be sealed. Sierra confirms this and says that she woke up just like her. The girl says to thank Kaito, pointing at him and saying his name. Ununice looks at the man with interest. He steels himself and says it is a pleasure to meet her and introduces himself formally. He confirms Sierra's words and says he only removed the seal from her so she would listen to his request. She smiles and is surprised that an ordinary person was able to remove the seal from her and calls him interesting. Kaito tells her that his territory suffers from a lack of water. He says that with the help of her magic, this problem can be solved. He enthusiastically asks to lend her power to the people of Algord. Ununice declines with a sweet smile. He is completely taken aback by this answer. Sierra reproachfully addresses Ununice. She says that ordinary people cannot use angels as their servants, and wonders why Sierra is so obsessed with the idea of serving him. She proudly states that she will only help with things that can arouse her intellectual curiosity. She explains that for this reason, when the city was in danger, she sealed herself. The guy is very surprised by this fact. She complains that she looked after the city, but it was worth leaving it for a while, as it died itself. She hopes that he will not make her look after his city. Kaito thinks that despite this, she always stayed close to Blausen, and what she told about the destruction of the city is also interesting. The boy asks if Blausen was a beautiful city. Eunice confidently answers yes, because it was her capital. The guy says that he will definitely make Algord as rich and beautiful a city as Blausen, or even better. Eunice gets angry and says that he won't succeed. He looks at her with a determined look, and she backs away a little. Kaito tells Eunice to watch over his city, for one day it will become more beautiful than Blausen. He is sure that she herself is curious to see this, for such an event is a fascinating spectacle. Eunice remembers her city when it was still flourishing and alive, and the inhabitants who worshipped her. A small smile appears on her face, and she raises her finger, casting a spell. She points her finger upwards, and after a while, drops fall on Kaito's shoes. Then the drops become more and more, and it starts to rain. The guy is very surprised. Lisa runs happily and shouts hooray. Sierra confirms that this is the magic of creation. She smiles at the hero, untouched by the rain, saying that he has captured her attention. She warns that if he is going to go that far, she will ask him to show her the territory. The heroes take this as a good sign, and are extremely happy to hear it. Eunice coquettishly descends to the ground to them. She looks at her ruined city for the last time, saying very tenderly that this rain is for him, and wishes him to rest in peace. A single tear runs down her cheek. She does not take her eyes off the city, and wishes her dear Blausen a peaceful sleep. With the help of the magic of creation, Eunice can create anything except living beings: wood, paper, stone, iron, and water. By creating water in her hands, Eunice surprised the people of Algord, who were ready to line up to taste the water. Eunice sent a powerful stream of water that splashed over the people, who greedily swallowed it and exclaimed how good it felt. Lisa runs and admires the village that the Archangel of Creation built. Even the imperturbable Sierra noticed the impressive buildings. Einhorn is impressed by how much has changed in the half-day she has been away from the village. The village was almost in ruins, but since Eunice arrived, everything has been rapidly created and developed. However, Sierra is not very impressed by the Angel of Creation's abilities. Lisa bursts into Kaito's house, telling him that she's back. The hero is focused on something, so he doesn't immediately notice her. Kaito draws plans and diagrams for Eunice without stopping at a fast pace, who accepts the outlined ideas for landscaping the territory with interest. The difference between the powers of humans and archangels is shown in the contrast in the images of an exhausted Kaito and a very cheerful Eunice. Having received the new plans, the Angel of Creation runs away. She is always ready to immediately begin creating the Lord's new idea. The hero continues to work diligently on the papers, pausing for a moment to greet Sierra and Lisa. The girls began to worry about Kaito's condition, who was exhausting himself with continuous work. They compared his appearance to that of the undead. The hero admitted that he had not slept for several days, so his appearance was quite justified. But instead of going to rest, Kaito uses the awakening skill on himself, amplifying its effect through his own fist. Lord admitted that he was both amazed and exhausted by Eunice's desire to constantly create something, but he was also grateful to her for Algord's rapid development. Lisa supported his words, saying that she did not even recognize the surroundings when she returned here. The guys discussed how the built Temple of Eunice became a landmark of Algord. Kaito also admitted that while he was grateful to Sierra's friend for the architecture, he would have liked to leave all the construction to the Angel of Creation. Lord also notes that now all the houses built by Eunice look in the avant-garde style. The private home created by the Angel of Creation looks, in Kaito's opinion, like tofu with speckled patterns. And the Temple of Master Eunice seems too big to the hero. Algord's house also seems huge to him, because you can even drive a cart into it. Lisa compares Kaito's house to a castle. The hero is forced to acknowledge the similarity of the architecture. However, according to Helmut, when the Lord himself began drawing up plans for Eunice, the inhabitants breathed a sigh of relief as the objects became more adequate, that is, necessary and useful. Wells and food storage facilities appeared, and the Temple of the Angel of Creation, which towered over the entire city, was decided to be used as a watchtower. It turned out that Helmut had brought a small sprout from the growing center for Kaito. Kaito explained that he had asked Ununice to make a room in which something could be grown. The hero was worried that the angel of creation would not be able to handle the structure, because of which nothing would be able to grow there. However, Kaito's fears were not justified, and a plant was brought from the cultivation center after all. It was a tomato seedling. The Lord was so touched by it that he pressed it to his cheek like a little pet. Helmut shared his impressions. He was also very surprised, because before that, all attempts to grow something ended in failure. But now, thanks to the method of plant cultivation, which was proposed and implemented by Kaito, the first results have finally appeared. Helmut thought that Lord Algord used some kind of magic, but Kaito admitted that it was his aristocratic education and previously learned skills that he was able to use. The hero explained that for a good harvest, it is necessary to contain special microorganisms in the soil. Therefore, he specially engaged in the fact that they were populated in the soil of Algord. Lisa didn't understand at first how they could be populated. Then Kaito explained that the process of populating microorganisms involves mixing northern forest soil, food scraps, and other biological waste. However, he noted that water is the most important resource for agricultural crops. And thanks to Ununice, the first step towards complete self-sufficiency of Algord is being taken, because this self-sufficiency is achieved in the ability to extract water through the created structures. The angel of creation flies over the city. She catches an unusual aroma that lures her into Kaito's house. She enters through the window straight into the room that spreads the delicious smell. The source of the aroma was a roast of wild boar with milk. The second name of the dish was mashishimashi on ivory. Lisa, who had cooked the roast, invited Ununice to dine with them. The angel of creation did not believe at first that the girl had cooked everything herself, but she nevertheless decided to try one piece. In a separate room, Kaito and Helmut discussed the city's labor shortage. Although water no longer had to be mined, the volume of work had increased, including due to the increased pace of construction and farming. Kaito reminded that Algord was just a developing village, so in order to attract workers from outside, a special attractive factor was needed. While they were talking, Lisa came into the room with a hot dinner. The girl suggested taking a short break and having dinner. While she was putting the roast on the table, the men already seemed very hungry. Sierra was also offered a treat, but she was very skeptical. She was embarrassed by such a custom of dining, but she still decided to try a ready rib. With a joint effort, dinner is eaten very quickly. Sierra subtly tries to taste the flavor. The Archangel suddenly becomes very happy, and her always imperturbable face looks blissful. A blush appeared. The roast seemed very tasty to her. The dinner continued. Ununice asked the girl about the ingredients of the dish. Lisa said that she added chayote mushrooms to the food, a tasty and nutritious delicacy that is considered a luxury product, and in the Empire they are sold at the highest prices. The angel of creation admires the taste and praises Lisa for her cooking, noting that Kaito and Helmut even cry with pleasure. The girl is modest and justifies herself by saying that her skills are not that good, she just managed to get high-quality ingredients. Lisa continued to talk about chayote mushrooms. She said that they are very difficult to collect, as they grow in places where dangerous monsters live. But this time, thanks to Sierra, the mushroom harvest was very successful. Kaito suddenly had a bright idea. The hero came up with a way to solve the labor problem. He thought that chayote mushrooms could become a signature ingredient that Algord could sell to the Empire. Kaito confirmed the success of his idea with arguments that if even angels liked the mushroom, then there would be even more willing people willing to buy chayote at a bargain price. The angels thought about the Lord's proposal. Sierra liked Kaito's idea, although she liked the mushrooms themselves more than the idea of selling them. The Archangel said that if the Lord's plan allowed her to eat more mushrooms, she would definitely help. Kaito was formed by Sierra's desire. He really counted on her help. Sierra declared a hunt for chayotes and immediately set out on her journey. She takes off sharply, grabbing the hero by the leg and promising that she will definitely help him get the mushrooms. Kaito tries to gently correct the angel that they are more likely to help her, and not she them, given their difference in strength and capabilities. Sierra, Lisa, and Kaito make their way through the forest. The Archangel and the adventurer seem to be in good spirits and full of energy. They are well ahead of the already exhausted nobleman who is struggling to climb the mountain. Kaito was clearly not used to making such movements over such distances. The heroes had to go further into the forest than usual, into the very depths of the virgin thicket, because that was where the chayote mushrooms grew. Sierra reasoned that the deeper you go into the forest, the more valuable and frequent the high-quality ingredients and medicinal herbs will be. However, one must not forget that this forest is home to dangerous monsters. Therefore, one must be very vigilant. Having warned her companions, Sierra immediately reassured them that they should not worry while she was near them. The Archangel herself could not wait to meet the tasty mushrooms. Kaito expressed hope that he and his friends would find lots of mushrooms, when suddenly, he noticed some mysterious shiny plant. The hero picked a flower and tried to understand what kind of plant it was and why it somehow strangely attracted him. Lisa announced that they had finally arrived at the place where she had picked chayotes the last time. Kaito prepared his bag and suggested that they begin picking mushrooms. The hero discovered that Sierra had disappeared somewhere. He began looking for her on all sides and calling her. Lisa wanted to calm him down and suggested that the Archangel had simply gone ahead. While they were calling Sierra, a huge monster suddenly came out to them. The monster growled wildly at the adventurers. Kaito was terrified, but he managed to grab Lisa and shield the girl a little with his body. Suddenly, Sierra flew out from the depth of the forest, holding something in her hands, and suddenly attacked the monster, saving her friends. The monster was defeated. As always, Sierra showed off to Kaito and Lisa how big a chayote she had found. Lisa rushed to the Archangel's arms, in gratitude, calling her mistress. Sierra casually and naively asks what they managed to do during all this time, find while she was looking for the mushroom. Having collected a whole basket of chayotes, the heroes returned home from the forest. They could already see the temple of Ununice, which testified to the proximity of home. The boys summed up their day and decided that it had been a lot of fun. They admitted that they had collected a lot of chayotes, which almost destroyed the ecosystem. While Liz was thinking about what could be made from the mushrooms, Sierra managed to appropriate them all for herself. Kaito called on the Archangel to be reasonable and know when to stop. Suddenly, the Lord remembered that he had taken something from the forest besides mushrooms. He called Sierra for a consultation. Kaito took out a shiny flower. Lisa was very surprised that he had collected something other than chayotes. She thought the plant was very beautiful. The hero admitted that he felt something mysterious about the flower. He thought that the plant might be somehow connected to angels. Kaito asked Sierra what she thought about it. The Archangel looked puzzled. She didn't know this flower. Suddenly, a stranger with strange long ears appeared in front of the friends and, threateningly, leaned his sword against Sierra. Kaito and Lisa don't understand what's going on. They are confused and scared. The girl with the unusual ears blocked the way to Sierra so that the boys could not interfere. She threatened that she was in a hurry, so she demanded that they immediately give her what the boys brought from the forest. She called it cargo. Kaito tries to figure out who the armed girl with the long ears is. The foreigner continued to threaten Sierra. Suddenly, Lisa notices that the girl is not alone. The heroes are surrounded by the same long-eared warriors who do not inspire either safety or trust. The armed girl said that she did not want to fight, but she just needed to finish all her business and leave immediately. The long-eared girl once again demanded that the mushrooms be given to her. Sierra calmly used the power of the Archangel and eliminated the threat, throwing the aliens aside. The threatening girl flew upwards with a shockwave and was disarmed. The knocked-down girl, unconscious, heard her comrades making excuses and saying that they had no ill will towards the heroes. They said that they had simply pulled out their swords to slightly scare Kaito and his friends. They were told that there was no such thing as a free lunch, so they were beaten, although the guys did not hide their relief that the long ears were not seriously hurt after Sierra's blow. The long-eared girl began to slowly come to her senses. Her comrades were glad that she finally woke up. Kaito also noticed that the girl had woken up. Long-eared didn't understand what was happening now. Kaito explained to her that she had lost consciousness when she fell to the ground. The hero said that at Sierra's request, he was taking their weapons. Although the angel did not feel any malice from them, they decided it was better to be on the safe side. The Lord demanded an answer as to who these aliens were and why they were threatening him and his companions. The girl did not want to answer and remained silent. Lisa emotionally expressed her indignation. She tried to understand why Kaito couldn't see that they were bandits. Lisa stated that it had been their custom for a long time to attack adventurers and merchants, and since the armed girl pointed her sword at Sierra, she could do the same as the bandits. But the girl stood up for herself, emphasizing the exclusivity of her race by saying that people may engage in robbery, but people like her do not. Lisa didn't believe the long-eared one and was angry with her. Kaito called her to calm down. Lord Algord said he wanted to make sure that such an attack would not happen again. He was glad that everything had worked out and no one had been hurt, but he expressed fears about what might have happened if it had been someone else. Kaito said that if they had pointed the sword at someone other than Sierra, he would never have forgiven them. The hero's words amazed everyone, and even scared them a little. The young man's behavior reflected the traits of a true leader and caring lord. Kaito offered the long-eared girl to exchange vows to resolve the conflict and cement peace. Kaito vowed that he would forgive the attackers if they told him the real reason for their actions. The hero asked Sierra's opinion, since she was the one being threatened. She gave her consent. At first, the long-eared girl did not believe that they wanted to forgive them. Kaito swore this to her with his skills. The girl introduced herself. She turned out to be an elf named Adelna. The Lord finally figured out why she had such unusual ears. The elf said that she and her companions had come to human territory to find a certain and special ingredient that could not be found in the Elven lands. The elf had heard somewhere that this special ingredient contained the divine power of a real angel. It tasted amazing. In addition, it cleansed the body of all impurities. Chayote mushroom, Bud called it a drop of dew from the sky. The heroes were impressed by the story. Adelna's comrades did not expect such frankness. They were confused. The elves tried to reason with their friend, but she continued. Adelna said that she was very upset when she saw the whole basket of mushrooms that the heroes had collected. She thought that Kaito and the girls were just swindlers. In her defense, the elf said that they really did have a reason to want those mushrooms. She admitted that her own consciousness left her, and her body began to move on its own when she thought that she would not be able to collect as many mushrooms. After her words, Adelna apologized to Sierra again. The angel sternly wanted to warn the elves not to dare approach her mushrooms, but she didn't finish. Kaito managed to stop Sierra in time to settle things peacefully. He said that he understood the reason for the elves' actions, but he wanted to know the circumstances behind it. Adelna hesitated, but the sight of an enraged Sierra made the elf admit that the mushrooms were needed for her father. Adelnaya said that her father had been bedridden for a long time, and the smell of death around him was growing stronger every day. The best doctors in the country of elves were powerless. The elf asked if people knew about the miraculous medicinal plant that grows on their territory. She said that as soon as she found out about him, she immediately left her hometown and went looking for him. She just wanted to help her father. Once in human territory, the heroes were the first people she met. Adelna cried when she remembered her father. Kaito remembered his father. He resolutely grabbed the basket of mushrooms. He put her in front of the elf and said that she could take them. Lissa became indignant. Sierra didn't understand the action, why Kaito was doing this. Lisa said that she was against it because they were risking their lives for the mushrooms. She reminded the Lord that the city needed Chayotes to solve its problems. But the hero objected to her and began his story about the elves. Kaito explained that elves are a special race with a longer lifespan, long elongated ears, and a well-groomed appearance. On the one hand, they are very similar to humans, but only minor external features make them different. The Lord said that before these two races lived on the same territory, but people envied the elves in everything, so they were expelled from the territory of people. Lisa was impressed by the hero's story, because she and Kaito were also exiled. With tears in her eyes, Adelna said that knowing history, one could understand the girl's distrust of elves. Adelna believes that this whole situation is the result of the mistakes of the ancestors, so the new generation needs to become a binding solution to the disagreements between the two races. Humans took literally everything from the elves, and mushrooms are not the biggest problem. Kaito smiled, as if approving of the elf's proposal. Adelna, crying, clasping her hands under her chin, thanked the hero. Suddenly, one of Adelna's companions finally managed to get her attention while her friend's arm was being bandaged. Until then, she had been unable to interrupt Adelna and correct her that the plant they were looking for, a drop of dew from the sky, was not a mushroom. The elf's statement shocked everyone. The elf, crying, began to apologize for not being able to read the atmosphere, but she was very worried that if she had not corrected the facts, it would have been too late. Adelna was indignant that she had not been told about this right away, because all this could have been avoided. The elf began to justify herself by saying that when Adelna saw the basket of mushrooms, it was as if she instantly lost her personality. She stopped listening to her comrades, did not let them even say a word, only giving them orders. The elf was about to tell everything when the girl jumped forward at the last moment. Adelna lamented in front of the basket of mushrooms because everything that happened could have been avoided. Lisa began to wonder what the elves were thinking because the mushrooms are called chayotes, not a drop of dew from the sky. Kaito also thought that they were the same plant, only with different names, which may differ due to the difference in countries. Lord Algorda asked the elf if she knew what a drop of dew from the sky looked like. The girl admitted that she only knows in words. She began to explain that, firstly, a drop of dew from the sky is not a mushroom, but a medicinal plant that has leaves and a stem. The elf continued her description, saying that the petals of the plant were spherical, the leaves were five-pointed, the stem was stiff and straight, and shiny pollen was floating around the flower. Suddenly, the elf notices a flower pinned to Sierra's hair, recognizes it from her description of a drop of dew from the sky, and shouts that this is what they were looking for. The elf is frightened and stunned by her sudden discovery. While cultivating the land with Kaito, Lisa asked him why he gave all the coyotes to the elves. The Lord replied that he thought from their story that the elves had problems with food, so he gave them a whole basket of mushrooms. Kaito admitted that the country of the elves reminded him of the old Algord, so he decided to help them. The hero also noted that they had collected enough seeds in the forest from which many plants could grow. Kaito reminded that, thanks to Ununice, they can easily grow almost any crop. Lisa countered that the problems of the lack of manpower and the attacks of monsters still remained. Suddenly, Kaito interrupted Lisa and shouted that a monster had appeared. But the Lord was wrong. It was not a monster, but an enraged Sierra with a log in her teeth. Kaito screamed and asked again not to spoil the seedlings. The hero calmed down a bit and asked to wait while he fixed everything. Lisa could not comment on what had happened. But Lisa the girl returned to the conversation about the lack of labor. After all, they had collected a lot of seeds, but there was almost no one to work with them. Kaito dreamily reassured Lisa that this problem would be solved soon. They wouldn't even have to wait for the next chayotes to ripen. The young man remembered how he had parted with the elves. Then he had learned that the elves were having problems with food. Then he had given them all the mushrooms he had collected, and the elves had thanked them for their kindness. Adelna then told Kaito that elves have always been famous for their ability to keep their oaths. One of the residents of Algord the man kept a careless post at the Temple of Ununice, which also doubled as a watchtower, and yawned because he was tired of watching the horizon. Suddenly, the guard noticed something strange that surprised or frightened him. It was a horde of elves that were approaching Algord. The elves said that they promised to come, so they came. It turned out that Adelna brought 100 elves to the territory of people who were ready to work and toil. Lord Algorda joyfully greeted the arriving elves. The bald guard was scared because he thought it was an army of elves who went to war against humans after Kaito helped them. However, Helmut calmed the man down, saying that he was wrong. Helmut compared the arrival of the elves to the story when an animal that a person has helped comes and thanks him the next day. However, the guard was still scared. He could not believe that this was a grateful visit from the elves. The man was worried that the elves did not like the coyote mushrooms, so they came to take revenge on the humans. The scared guard called to the Lord for help. Kaito told the guard that there was nothing to be afraid of, because he had already spoken with the elves, who had given him their word that they would come to the aid of the people with the shortage of labor if their tribe approved of it. This calmed the men down a little. In confirmation of his words, the Lord pointed out to the inhabitants of Algord in the distance his friend, the elf Adelna. Even during his first parting with the elves, Kaito told them that his village had a problem with a shortage of labor, due to which Algord could not fully develop. It was then that Kaito gave the elves the mushrooms as gratitude, but in advance, if they came to the aid of the people. The hero told Adelna that he had a plan for mass production of food. This would allow an entire tribe to live in Algord. Kaito specifically said this in case the elves wanted to move in with the humans. The elf understood Kaito's idea and said that further actions were up to her, hinting at a favorable outcome for the two peoples. Kaito personally went out to greet the elves, who were led by Adelna. The hero asked his friend with concern how her father was feeling, what condition he was in. Adelna beamed with happiness. She said that thanks to the help of people, everything was fine and her father was now okay. Kaito sympathetically supported her. Lord Algorda shared that he was very surprised by the arrival of the elves. He did not expect that they would decide to move to the territory of people. Satisfied, Adelna reminded him that elves always keep their oaths. The last phrase was not spoken in human language, but Kaito was able to repeat it. Kaito asked the elf if he had pronounced their phrase correctly, to which he received a positive answer. The large number of elves who arrived alarmed Lord Algord. He assumed that such a migration would be a serious blow to the elven lands. Kaito asked Adelna if everything would be all right with their country. The girl reassured the hero that since the elves live long, they have many subjects. Among the subjects were people who sought temporary protection in the territory of the elves, or people who were unhappy with the local conditions and authorities. The people did not want to move to Algord, but the elves came to them with great joy. Kaito sympathetically recalled that it was still hard to leave his native lands. However, the elf reassured him, saying that only those who were deeply interested in living in the territory of people came with her. Those who were interested in the personality of Kaito himself also came to Algord. The hero was surprised that the elves came to the village for him. Adelna blissfully reported that Kaito was considered a saint in elven circles because of his actions, as he gave them food and medicinal plants for free to save the life of the elven king. The Lord was confused by the fact that the elf told her people a completely different story than what had happened initially. Adelna's story only coincided with the real one in some details and was greatly embellished. Suddenly, Kaito realized what status his friend had. To confirm his guess, Kaito asked if he had heard correctly that Adelna's father was the king of the elves. The girl confirmed her words. The elf, as if nothing had happened, naively asked, "Didn't she mention in her story, the elf father with a serious illness is the king?" To clarify, Adelna added that it was her father, the king of the elves. Suddenly, Kaito heard someone's heavy footsteps. It was the tread of the elven king, who, together with his subjects, came to the territory of men. Kaito was taken aback by the king's impressive height. Lord Algorda admitted to himself that he knew about their meeting with the elven king, but he never imagined that he would be overcome with fear. The guest's status and size frightened Kaito. Adelna introduced her father to the hero. While Kaito was still conscious that the king of the elven tribe himself was standing before him, Adelna's father had already approached and apologized for his intrusion. The elven king introduced himself. His name was Samuel. He personally confirmed his social status. Kaito began to relate himself and the guest in the hierarchy of the social structure of society, at the top of which reigns the status of the king. The hero thought fussily that the status of the guest was much higher than his status as a lord of the territories. He was afraid, because his status rose only above the common people, and before the status of the king there were three more social layers: the aristocracy, the prime minister, and the royal family. Kaito knelt before the king, greeting his majesty Samuel, but Adelna's father stopped him. The king calmly explained to the hero that since they were of different races, the traditional hierarchy of social status was completely different. He asked not to use it. Confused, Kaito stuttered and asked why the elf decided so. The king sat down on the ground with a thud, preparing to speak. This unexpected behavior of the guest frightened Kaito even more. Lord Algorda was afraid that the elven king had become ill, so he exclaimed what was wrong with him. Samuel was calm. He invited Kaito to sit with him and talk to each other as equals. The elf king addressed the hero as a person with a status higher than him and called Kaito his savior. The lord was embarrassed. The two nobles sat opposite each other, their people standing behind them, waiting to negotiate. The elves seemed peace-loving and hopeful. The humans were as confused as their lord. Only Lisa was glad of the new impressions. The angels seemed indifferent, but their very presence at the negotiations testified to their interest in what was happening. Kaito was still confused and worried about the king's condition. He asked again if his guest's body was okay, but the king interrupted him. The king did not let the lord speak, deciding to first thank him for saving him, because if it were not for Kaito's kindness, the elf would hardly have been healed. Samuel said that the most amazing thing about his recovery was that after years of being bedridden and his body completely wasted, one dose of medicine brought him back to form, and he became just as he had been in his golden days. The king admitted that he knew the details of Kaito's first meeting with the elves, and how his daughter had been rude to the humans. Samuel asked to accept his apology. The elf also said that his people were famous for keeping their oaths, and the punishment for breaking them was a ritual, the name of which he pronounced in his own tongue. It was the ritual of cutting off ears. Samuel expressed gratitude that, thanks to the customs of the people, his daughter's recklessness was curbed. However, this was not enough for the king. He handed his blade to the man, saying that he wanted to take the punishment in place of his daughter for her intolerant attitude towards the king's savior. He asked Kaito to perform a ritual and remove the shame from the elf. Samuel was very determined. He said that he must atone for his daughter, and if it was not enough to cleanse his ears, the king was ready to give his life, if only to remove the shame from Adelna. For the elf, this was very unexpected. She did not know about her father's decision. Frightened, Adelna turned to her father. But the king was unmoved. The elf turned to Kaito to intervene and bring her father to his senses. But Samuel told her not to meddle in his affairs because she had already made a mistake, which he, as king and father, must correct. The king's decision was not discussed. The upset elf turned to her father for the last time with a plea. Kaito seemed confused. He seemed to understand what the Elven king wanted from him, but some doubts were bothering him. He was still trying to figure out the situation. The Lord reflected that his conflict with Adelna had been resolved by the first oath at their first meeting. The elves had shown a bad attitude, the humans had forgiven them, and the peace that had been achieved had been sealed by a common oath. Samuel's intervention was to continue the conflict in which the elves respond to the forgiveness of humans with a sense of duty. Kaito guessed that the Elven king was testing him. He decided that Samuel wanted to test the true intentions of his salvation, as well as to ensure the independence of his people who came to the territory of the people. Kaito thought that the king was afraid that the people would use the debt of the elves for their own benefit. Samuel, meanwhile, was wondering if the man really saw him as a depressed and stupid king who didn't value the life he saved. The elf was mentally addressing Kaito, thinking that the man wouldn't treat him so well if he knew why the elf had been bedridden for so many years. Now, the elves were bound to men by a covenant, the source of which was the life of Samuel. The king promised himself that he would break this covenant with his death. The elf king approached Kaito to see if the Lord accepted his offer. The hero assessed the situation because he was offered to end the life of the king of a friendly country. Kaito said that he did not save the elf in order to take his life with his own hands. Samuel was not satisfied with the man's answer, so he told Kaito that if he refused, the debt would only increase and spread to the entire people, and then the Lord would have to take the life of every elf. Kaito tensed. He knew that the king was not giving him any chance to refuse to collect the elven debt. The young man thought frantically. He also understood that Samuel had come to people with the purpose of dying. Only Kaito did not understand why he should take the life of the one he had just saved. After all, he did it out of necessity. The hero did not understand why it was impossible to get by with simple gratitude. Kaito was nervous, as everything was not going according to his plan. The Lord understood that the only way out of the situation was to offer a price different and similar to the price of the king's life. The hero understood that he had to find a solution that would satisfy Samuel. The Lord went over various options in his head. He was straining himself to think of how to resolve the current situation. Kaito used his awakening skill to make a wise decision. The glow of the mark seemed to identify the person's mind that had been awakened. Samuel demanded an answer. Kaito made up his mind. He said that out of the two options offered, he would choose the one where only one life was taken. The Elven King approved of the Lord's decision, noting that it had taken him a long time to decide on this. Adelna couldn't believe that everything that was happening before her eyes was reality. She cried and tried to resist somehow, but nothing worked. However, Kaito made his own adjustments to the debt atonement. He stated that the king's life was not a suitable price, since if it were used as payment for the elves' debt, the hero himself would inevitably remain in debt. Then the Lord was asked to propose something else. Kaito asked the king to pay off the debt with his wisdom. The elf had to ask again whether he had understood correctly that the debt would be exhausted by wisdom, to which he received a positive answer. Kaito explained that since elves live much longer, they have much more wisdom. Elves know history, different technologies, and other knowledge. The hero admitted that he wants to adopt this knowledge, and Samuel will help him with this. Ununice, who had been watching the whole thing with Sierra, found it amusing that Kaito wanted to keep the elf king alive and extract as much benefit from him as possible. She admitted that such a move was to her taste. However, Ununice added that she did not support the Lord's choice. Kaito sat intently and hoped, angry, that the angel would not make a scene now. Still crying, Adelna realized that with this outcome, no one would encroach on her father's life. Kaito confirmed the elf's words. After all, in order to adopt the wisdom of an elf, he must be alive. The king grinned. Suddenly, Samuel burst out laughing. The elf approvingly said that the Lord had a very interesting idea. The king's words frightened the daughter and confused Kaito again. The hero did not understand the elf's train of thought. The king was impressed by the man. He called the young man irresistible, recalling that in his long elven memory, people are terrible, but even among them one can find a pearl like Kaito. At these revelations, Samuel tore one of the earrings from his ear. The hero still did not understand, and the elf's actions horrified him and left him in a stupor. The king handed the torn earring to Kaito. When handing the earring to the man, the elf said that during the ritual of cutting ears, it is necessary to tear off the earrings. The king noted that times have changed and no one cuts off ears for a long time. Therefore, tearing off earrings is a version of the ritual for young people. But Samuel pointed out that since Kaito had no earrings, he would have to cut off his entire ear. The Lord was horrified. But this prank turned out to be a joke by the elf king. He laughed as he placed the ornament in Kaito's palm. The man was still in a state of slight confusion. Samuel also noted that such a ritual is an internal agreement that applies only to elves. Having achieved peace on both sides, the heroes were friendly towards each other. The king swore that any elf would fulfill any request of Kaito, no matter how difficult it was. The oath that was sworn was sealed with the name of the king. The events moved to Kaito's hometown. Algord's younger brother approaches the large house of the aristocratic family. He looks pleased and confidently enters the house. Cleo, after many years, finally returned to his home. He proudly walks towards his father, solemnly raising his hands. The father greeted his youngest son without leaving his workplace. Cleo reported that he tried to return home as soon as possible and tell his father about all his achievements. Alphonse Fellbach was ready to listen to his son. He told Cleo not to disappoint her father, so as not to be like her brother, Kaito. Alphonse explained to his son in detail on the map what territory the emperor had entrusted to their family, since it was Cleo who became the heir to the Fellbach territory. Kaito was given Algord. However, Alphonse also had some plans for Formenge. Chief Fellbach turned to his youngest son and demanded that he report whether everything was going smoothly in the territory he had been managing for several dozen days. After all, this was precisely why his father had called Cleo. After the report, Alphonse praised his son, saying that he was doing a good job with his duties. The father also suggested a new territory for Cleo, Formenge, since there is little rain in these lands, and a skill of the youngest child, Fountain of Wealth, bringing blessings and fertility to the parched lands, could be very useful there. Cleo promised that in the next period, the father will not recognize Formenge, which will be transformed under his leadership. Alphonse expressed hope for his son's stated plans, and called for a messenger who was supposed to take the letter somewhere further than usual. Father Fellbach sent a messenger to Algord. He was curious whether Kaito was still alive or not. He never mentioned the name of his eldest son. Lord Algorda woke up on the street without his coat. He seemed lost because he did not remember how he ended up on the ground. Kaito tried to remember what had happened the day before and what had preceded his state. He was met by the elf Frederica, who gave him some kind of drink. The young man was a little embarrassed, and Samuel's earring, which was inserted into the Lord's ear, emphasized the man's mourning detachment. Frederica handed him a glass of the drink and promised that after drinking it, the hangover would go away and Kaito himself would feel better. Then the hero remembered that yesterday he, Samuel, and the others had drunk elven wine together. Around the fountain, on the steps of which Kaito was sitting, the rest of the people were sleeping, still under the influence of wine. From the conversation with the elf, it turned out that a lot of people drank yesterday. Frederica noted with irony, referring to the people, that they do not know when to stop in time. Kaito remembered that last night he had to use his awakening skill on some of the guys to save them from their comatose state. However, the young man noted that it was a wonderful pastime. After all, there had never been such fun before the arrival of the elves. Kaito admitted that he would like to see such a wonderful mood continue in Algorda. The Lord said that he still could not believe that his village had become so advanced, that it had such joyful celebrations, and various technologies, and beautiful architecture. Algord's development. The man noted that thanks to the elves that Adelna had brought and her father's knowledge, the people of Algord had quickly become civilized. Helmut also noted that now, from an architectural point of view, their buildings have become stronger, the streets and clothes have become prettier, and the deliciously prepared food is now not inferior to the imperial dishes. In the end, The man said that there was no trace left of the half-destroyed Algord. Adelna noticed Lisa lying on the sidewalk, recovering from a night of fun, and went to help her. Samuel came to the boys with his daughter. The Elf King teased Helmut about fainting too quickly yesterday. The man had to agree that 1 barrel of wine per person was still too much. Helmut still looked a little battered after it. Adelna shook Lisa to wake her up, but the girl resisted and asked to be allowed to sleep a little longer. Kaito, who had been monitoring the communication between the elves and humans, noted that due to their hard work together, the relationship between the races had become much closer. They said it was time for everyone to have breakfast. The sleeping ones immediately responded and prepared for the meal. Even ordinary breakfast became elegant, which testified to Algord's high standard of living. Sierra ate her food blissfully. Everything seemed very tasty to her. Kaito said that when he first moved to this area, he never expected to eat such delicious food here. The Lord was about to take a bite of his sandwich when his breakfast mysteriously disappeared. Kaito's sandwich was taken by Ununice. The hero wanted to find out why she did it, but did not finish. Ununice interrupted him and pointed her finger to the side, drawing the young man's attention somewhere. She pointed to an angel, a human, and an elf. Ununice noted that there was not a single place in the entire kingdom where such different races sat together so peacefully as they did now in Algorda. Ununice noted that this was the first time she'd ever seen an elven race. Before this, she'd only known humans. However, even at this point, the angel of creation could not help but praise herself, saying that when they met her, all these races were blinded by her divine piety. Ununice continued to praise herself, placing her personality above the elves and humans. She said that seeing her terrifying beauty and splendor with her own eyes was good fortune, so these elves and humans were truly lucky. Kaito supported the angel, confirming that he and his people were very lucky to have her. Happy Ununice demanded that he praise her further. The Lord continued to reflect on how fate was indeed kind to him. Kaito may have been exiled from his home, but he still managed to find a place he liked. He appreciated that the people of Algord worked hard for the good of everyone, and for a hero, it was quite an achievement to make friends from another race. The young man promised himself that he would definitely cherish all of this. Suddenly, someone unexpectedly started applauding. The Lord looked around tensely. The sound was from behind him. The unknown man was sitting like all the hero's friends. He was dressed like everyone else after a night of partying. The man began to praise Kaito and say that he had done a great job. Helmut was surprised as he saw this man for the first time, so he asked him who he was. The resident of Algord immediately began asking other questions. How long ago he came to them, why Helmut himself did not know about it. The vigilant man already assumed that the stranger was a thief or a bandit and began to threaten him. However, Kaito stopped his friend, as he knew the man himself. The young man noted that this was the first time he had seen this guest since the hero was sent into exile. This man was Kaito's father's right hand. He was Felbach's messenger. The messenger closed his eyes approvingly. The envoy admitted that he had been able to walk around the city yesterday and inspect it completely. He could not believe his eyes that Kaito had managed to restore Algord to such an extent. The man was sure that Alphonse Felbach would appreciate this news. The young man remembered his father. Kaito admitted that he had originally gone to the province as a lord chief to help his overly busy father. And now that he had tried to govern the territory himself, he had only grown to admire his father more, as governing such a huge territory in Felbach was very difficult. The Lord quickly began to figure out why his father had sent his envoy here. Kaito thought that he had not lived up to his father's expectations at all, but after all, his father had organized all this himself. The hero came to the conclusion that in his current state, Algord would definitely be able to be of use to Felbach. The father's messenger handed the Lord a sealed letter. The letter turned out to be a written summons to Kaito, in which his father invited him to the residence. After the delivery, the messenger immediately left. Kaito was asked whether he was going to see his father or not. After thinking for a while, the hero replied that he had planned to visit Alphonse in the near future. The Lord also noted that his father's envoy had already noticed the young man's outstanding results, so a visit to the residence would be entirely justified. Kaito also added that Algord has proven himself to be a good person, which means that the city will definitely receive help. The Lord's words pleased his caring friends who fought for the prosperity of Algord. The scene of events moves to a fortified city, the capital. Moving through the streets of the capital of Felbach, Helmut noted that he had been here for a long time. Adelna, however, was in a completely human city for the first time. Kaito told his friends that he would go to his father's residence with Sierra. The boys would have to behave well. They really liked their duty. The elf asked Helmut if he was sure that everything would be okay. The man did not understand the question at first. Adelna explained that she was starting to worry, but Helmut began to calm her down. He said that they should not be sent outside the city walls, and he also said that they would not be looked at as bandits because they were in decent clothes. Helmut noted that she herself was dressed like the daughter of an aristocrat. Such a compliment embarrassed the elf. Lisa began to laugh at the man's words, as Helmut again began to praise the clothes that the elves had sewn for them. Adelna got angry because she wasn't worried about her appearance. She said she was worried about something else entirely. Suddenly, Lisa voiced her concerns. She suggested that Kaito would cease to be a lord. Helmut thought about it. He reasoned that indeed, Kaito had restored the dead Algord to such a magnificent state in such a short time, which made him a very talented person by any measure. This could not go unnoticed. However, the man casually said that he himself was once promoted for his successes and sent to Algord. Lisa burst into tears at the thought that the Lord would not return to their home. But she quickly calmed down and, laughing, said that the most important thing is Kaito's happiness, and everyone just needs to eat their job. Kaito's job was to develop the destroyed territories. Helmut liked Lisa's words, but Adelna was silent. She was immersed in her fears. The girl was afraid that people in the capital would find out that she was actually an elf. She was depressed by the fact that she could not share these experiences with her friends and that they did not even think about it. Kaito appeared before his father. The young man greeted him, saying that they had not seen each other for a long time. Without waiting for a response from Alphonse, Lord Algorda said the same welcoming phrase to his younger brother. Cleo sarcastically remarked that her brother had found himself a female companion. The younger one made fun of the older one's broken heart, since he had decided to take such a step towards a relationship. Sierra was angry, but Kaito accepted his brother's joke without making any excuses. Alphonse said he had already read the report from his deputy. Felbach admitted that he did not even believe that it was about Algord. Kaito waited tensely for his father's verdict. Alphonse acknowledged his eldest son's work, calling it good. Cleo didn't expect such an assessment. He was both surprised and angry, which contrasted with the happy Kaito who finally completed his mission. The father stood up from his desk and walked towards his eldest son. Alphonse admitted that he had been too hasty when he called the skill, and Kaito himself useless. He said that he took it back. However, Felbach couldn't help but notice that his actions had driven the young man out of his comfort zone and made him a better person. Alphonse placed his hand approvingly on his son's shoulder and said the most cherished words about how Kaito was useful and his father was proud of him. The hero didn't believe his father's words. Sierra supported her friend with a smile. Cleo didn't understand what was happening and demanded an explanation. Alphonse and Kaito didn't understand what exactly had upset the younger one. Cleo took the reports on Algord in her hand. He couldn't accept that his older brother's skill could be useful for the development of the territories. Cleo took the reports to make sure that the achievements recorded could be attributed to Kaito. But Lord Algorda himself admitted that there were some inaccuracies in the report. Felbach decided to find the truth. Alphonse began to check the documents and read out the achievements: the completed waterways, the modernization of houses, the creation of fertile fields, the increase in the number of inhabitants. Father said that his deputy personally saw all these read changes. The messenger would certainly not lie in his report. Alphonse also noted that his messenger claimed that Algord was reborn. Cleo was not satisfied with this answer. Then Kaito supported his younger brother, saying that he was right in a sense. After all, in reality, it would not have been possible to restore Algord by one's own efforts. The eldest son explained that thanks to the awakening skill, he was able to find a common language with different people. Kaito also noted that the result he achieved in Algorda was the help of those with whom he was able to establish communication, and it is to them that he needs to express gratitude for the revival of the city. Then Alphonse, pointing to the Felbach map, said that he was ready to entrust Kaito with the management of another territory. This news left Lord Algord and Sierra dismayed. They were not prepared for such a turn of events. The father began to explain that he could not leave such a talented person, capable of reviving deserted territories, without work. Felbach officially lifted Kaito's exile and congratulated him on his return home. Sierra grabbed her friend's hand in hope. The boy tried to figure out, or at least guess, what would happen to Algord. He was not happy with the idea of leaving those places. But Alphonse was not moved by Kaito's worries. because, judging by the reports, everything would be fine with the city. After all, while Lord Algorda was in the capital, the city continued to develop, therefore it was almost independent. Kaito could not dispute his father's statements because he himself took care of achieving the city's independence. Felbach continued to get his point across to his son. He asked him whether he had realized that Algord no longer needed him or not. But his father's words were a blow to Kaito. The young man took it as if he was being driven out of his native place again. A feeling of loneliness washed over him, but Sierra, who held his hand the whole time, reminded him that he was not alone. Angel squeezed Kaito's wrist with incredible force, causing him to fall to his knees in pain. Sierra's actions scared both Cleo and her father. Angel let go of her hand and looked at Kaito, who didn't understand why she was doing this. Sierra reminded the hero how, at their first meeting, he offered her to move in and live with the residents of Algord. The angel's reminder comforted Kaito. He calmed down and admitted that Sierra was right. He apologized to her, since he should have been the one to tell her that it was time to go home. After the angel's handshake, the hero's hand was swollen, but tears in his eyes were from affection. Kaito apologized to his relatives and said that Algord was now his home. The hero's words caused indignation in Cleo and Alphonse. The father got angry and asked again how serious his eldest son was. Kaito calmly replied, yes. Cleo completely stopped understanding her older brother. He asked if Kaito really wanted to stay in Algorda, despite the kindness his father had shown. He reminded his brother that they could now be labeled criminals. The hero countered with Cleo that he was an important citizen. But his younger brother yelled at him, because Kaito was a member of the Felbach family, which meant he had to do what Mr. Felbach told him to do. Cleo asked her brother if Kaito really thought he would be forgiven for his selfishness, to which the young man only sighed, preparing to answer. To all the accusations, the hero responded that his family was the first to kick him out of his home, as if he were a stranger to them. Kaito made Algord his home. The city also became a home for the same outcasts as the young man himself, whom he would never abandon or let go. Kaito said that he will always be the Lord of Algord. He apologized that he could not stay any longer, as the citizens were waiting for him, and left, dragging Sierra along with him, who managed to tease the indignant aristocrats. But Alphonse remained calm. He understood that Kaito had matured a lot since they had not seen each other, and if the eldest son decided to continue being a lord, no one would stop him. But Cleo could not accept his brother's decision. He was angry with him. The younger brother saw only selfishness in the departing Kaito. He hated his brother and wanted to teach him a lesson with his own hands. Lord Algorda was completely calm. He saw ambition in himself, not selfishness. For him, the best place in the empire was the reborn city. And Kaito dreamed that one day he would make the territory of Algorda the best in the world. Kaito and Sierra finally walked out to their waiting friends. The boys joyfully rushed to hug each other.